origin and of survival value are suspect. Friendship certificates are not very satisfactory. Again, that outlook which values the collective above the individual necessarily disparages friendship. It is a relation between men at their highest level of individuality. It withdraws men from collective togetherness as surely as solitude itself could do, and more dangerously, for it withdraws them by twos and threes. Some forms of democratic sentiment are naturally hostile to it because it is selective and an affair of the few. To say these are my friends implies those are not. For all these reasons, if a man believes, as I do, that the old estimate of friendship was the correct one, he can hardly write a chapter on it except as a rehabilitation. This imposes on me at the outset a very tiresome bit of demolition. It has actually become necessary in our time to rebut the theory that every firm and serious friendship is really homosexual. The dangerous word really is here important. To say that every friendship is consciously and explicitly homosexual would be too obviously false. The wiseacres take refuge in the less palpable charge that it is really unconsciously, cryptically, in some Pickwickian sense homosexual. And this, though it cannot be proved, can never of course be refuted. The fact that no positive evidence of homosexuality can be discovered in the behavior of two friends does not disconcert the wiseacres at all. That, they say gravely, is just what we should expect. The very lack of evidence is thus treated as evidence. The absence of smoke proves that the fire is very carefully hidden. Yes, if it exists at all. But we must first prove its existence. Otherwise we are arguing like a man who should say if there were an invisible cat in that chair, the chair would look empty, but the chair does look empty. Therefore there is an invisible cat in it. A belief in invisible cats cannot perhaps be logically disproved, but it tells us a good deal about those who hold it. Those who cannot conceive friendship as a substantive love but only as a disguise or elaboration of eros betray the fact that they have never had a friend. The rest of us know that though we can have erotic love and friendship for the same person, yet in some ways nothing is less like a friendship than a love affair. Lovers are always talking to one another about their love, friends hardly ever about their friendship. Lovers are normally face to face, absorbed in each other, friends, side by side, absorbed in some common interest. Above all, eros, while it lasts, is necessarily between two only. But two, far from being the necessary number for friendship, is not even the best. And the reason for this is important. Lamb says somewhere that if, of three friends, A, B, and C, A should die, then B loses not only A but A's part in C, while C loses not only A but A's part in B. In each of my friends there is something that only some other friend can fully bring out. By myself I am not large enough to call the whole man into activity, I want other lights than my own to show all his facets. Now that Charles is dead, I shall never again see Ronald's reaction to a specifically Caroline joke. Far from having more of Ronald, having him to myself now that Charles is away, I have less of Ronald. Hence true friendship is the least jealous of loves. Two friends delight to be joined by a third, and three by a fourth, if only the newcomer is qualified to become a real friend. They can then say, as the blessed souls say in Dante, here comes one who will augment our loves. For in this love to divide is not to take away. Of course the scarcity of kindred souls, not to mention practical considerations about the size of rooms and the audibility of voices, set limits to the enlargement of the circle, but within those limits we possess each friend not less but more as the number of those with whom we share him increases. In this, friendship exhibits a glorious nearness by resemblance to heaven itself, where the very multitude of the blessed, which no man can number, increases the fruition which each has of God. For every soul, seeing him in her own way, doubtless communicates that unique vision to all the rest. That, says an old author, is why the seraphim in Isaiah's vision are crying holy, holy, holy to one another, Isaiah 6:3. The more we thus share the heavenly bread between us, the more we shall all have. The homosexual theory therefore seems to me not even plausible. This is not to say that friendship and abnormal eros have never been combined. Certain cultures at certain periods seem to have tended to the contamination. In warlike societies it was, I think, especially likely to creep into the relation between the mature brave and his young armor-bearer or squire. The absence of the women while you were on the warpath had no doubt something to do with it. In deciding, if we think we need or can decide, where it crept in and where it did not, we must surely be guided by the evidence, when there is any, and not by an a priori theory. Kisses, tears and embraces are not in themselves evidence of homosexuality. The implications would be, if nothing else, too comic. Hrothgar embracing Beowulf, Johnson embracing Boswell, a pretty flagrantly heterosexual couple, and all those hairy old toughs of centurions in Tacitus, clinging to one another and begging for last kisses when the legion was broken up, all pansies? If you can believe that, you can believe anything. On a broad historical view, it is, of course, not the demonstrative gestures of friendship among our ancestors but the absence of such gestures in our own society that calls for some special explanation. We, not they, are out of step. I have said that friendship is the least biological of our loves. Both the individual and the community can survive without it. But there is something else, often confused with friendship, which the community does need, something which, though not friendship, is the matrix of friendship. In early communities, the cooperation of the males as hunters or fighters was no less necessary than the begetting and rearing of children. A tribe where there was no taste for the one would die no less surely than a tribe where there was no taste for the other. Long before history began, we men have got together apart from the women and done things. We had to. And to like doing what must be done is a characteristic that has survival value. We not only had to do the things, we had to talk about them. We had to plan the hunt and the battle. When they were over, we had to hold a post-mortem and draw conclusions for future use. We liked this even better. We ridiculed or punished the cowards and bunglers, we praised the star performers. We reveled in technicalities. He might have known he'd never get near the brute, not with the wind that way. You see, I had a lighter arrowhead, that's what did it. What I always say is, stuck him just like that, see? Just the way I'm holding this stick. In fact, we talked shop. We enjoyed one another's society greatly, we braves, we hunters, all bound together by shared skill, shared dangers and hardships, esoteric jokes away from the women and children. As some wag has said, Paleolithic man may or may not have had a club on his shoulder, but he certainly had a club of the other sort. It was probably part of his religion, like that sacred smoking club where the savages in Melville's Typee were famously snug every evening of their lives. What were the women doing meanwhile? How should I know? I am a man and never spied on the mysteries of the Bona Dea. They certainly often had rituals from which men were excluded. When, as sometimes happened, agriculture was in their hands, they must, like the men, have had common skills, toils, and triumphs. Yet perhaps their world was never as emphatically feminine as that of their menfolk was masculine. The children were with them, perhaps the old men were there too. But I am only guessing. I can trace the prehistory of friendship only in the male line. This pleasure in cooperation, in talking shop, in the mutual respect and understanding of men who daily see one another tested, is biologically valuable. You may, if you like, regard it as a product of the gregarious instinct. To me that seems a roundabout way of getting at something which we all understand far better already than anyone has ever understood the word instinct, something which is going on at this moment in dozens of wardrooms, bar rooms, common rooms, messes and golf clubs. I prefer to call it companionship or clubbableness. This companionship is, however, only the matrix of friendship. It is often called friendship, and many people when they speak of their friends mean only their companions. But it is not friendship in the sense I give to the word. By saying this I do not at all intend to disparage the merely clubbable relation. We do not disparage silver by distinguishing it from gold. Friendship arises out of mere companionship when two or more of the companions discover that they have in common some insight or interest or even taste which the others do not share and which, till that moment, each believed to be his own unique treasure, or burden. The typical expression of opening friendship would be something like, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." We can imagine that among those early hunters and warriors, single individuals, one in a century, one in 1,000 years, saw what others did not, saw that the deer was beautiful as well as edible, that hunting was fun as well as necessary, dreamed that his gods might be not only powerful but holy. But as long as each of these percipient persons dies without finding a kindred soul, nothing, I suspect, will come of it. Art or sport or spiritual religion will not be born. It is when two such persons discover one another, when, whether with immense difficulties and semi-articulate fumblings or with what would seem to us amazing and elliptical speed, they share their vision, it is then that friendship is born. And instantly they stand together in an immense solitude. Lovers seek for privacy. Friends find this solitude about them, this barrier between them and the herd, whether they want it or not. They would be glad to reduce it. The first two would be glad to find a third. In our own time friendship arises in the same way. For us of course the shared activity and therefore the companionship on which friendship supervenes will not often be a bodily one like hunting or fighting. It may be a common religion, common studies, a common profession, even a common recreation. All who share it will be our companions, but 1 or 2 or 3 who share something more will be our friends. In this kind of love, as Emerson said, "Do you love me?" means do you see the same truth, or at least, do you care about the same truth? The man who agrees with us that some question, little regarded by others, is of great importance, can be our friend. He need not agree with us about the answer. Notice that friendship thus repeats on a more individual and less socially necessary level the character of the companionship which was its matrix. The companionship was between people who were doing something together, hunting, studying, painting, or what you will. The friends will still be doing something together, but something more inward, less widely shared and less easily defined, still hunters, but of some immaterial quarry, still collaborating, but in some work the world does not, or not yet, take account of, still traveling companions, but on a different kind of journey. Hence we picture lovers face to face but friends side by side, their eyes look ahead. That is why those pathetic people who simply want friends can never make any. The very condition of having friends is that we should want something else besides friends. Where the truthful answer to the question "Do you see the same truth?" would be "I see nothing and I don't care about the truth, I only want a friend," no friendship can arise, though affection of course may. There would be nothing for the friendship to be about, and friendship must be about something, even if it were only an enthusiasm for dominoes or white mice. Those who have nothing can share nothing, those who are going nowhere can have no fellow travelers. When the two people who thus discover that they are on the same secret road are of different sexes, the friendship which arises between them will very easily may pass in the first half hour into erotic love. Indeed, unless they are physically repulsive to each other, or unless one or both already loves elsewhere, it is almost certain to do so sooner or later. And conversely, erotic love may lead to friendship between the lovers. But this, so far from obliterating the distinction between the two loves, puts it in a clearer light. If one who was first, in the deep and full sense, your friend, is then gradually or suddenly revealed as also your lover, you will certainly not want to share the beloved's erotic love with any third. But you will have no jealousy at all about sharing the friendship. Nothing so enriches an erotic love as the discovery that the beloved can deeply, truly, and spontaneously enter into friendship with the friends you already had, to feel that not only are we two united by erotic love, but we 3 or 4 or 5 are all travelers on the same quest, have all a common vision. The coexistence of friendship and eros may also help some moderns to realize that friendship is in reality a love, and even as great a love as eros. Suppose you are fortunate enough to have fallen in love with and married your friend. And now suppose it possible that you were offered the choice of 2 futures: either you two will cease to be lovers but remain forever joint seekers of the same God, the same beauty, the same truth, or else, losing all that, you will retain as long as you live the raptures and ardors, all the wonder and the wild desire of eros. Choose which you please. Which should we choose? Which choice should we not regret after we had made it? I have stressed the unnecessary character of friendship, and this of course requires more justification than I have yet given it. It could be argued that friendships are of practical value to the community. Every civilized religion began in a small group of friends. Mathematics effectively began when a few Greek friends got together to talk about numbers and lines and angles. What is now the Royal Society was originally a few gentlemen meeting in their spare time to discuss things which they, and not many others, had a fancy for. What we now call the Romantic movement once was Mr. Wordsworth and Mr. Coleridge talking incessantly, at least Mr. Coleridge was, about a secret vision of their own. Communism, Tractarianism, Methodism, the movement against slavery, the Reformation, the Renaissance, might perhaps be said, without much exaggeration, to have begun in the same way. There is something in this. But nearly every reader would probably think some of these movements good for society and some bad. The whole list, if accepted, would tend to show, at best, that friendship is both a possible benefactor and a possible danger to the community. And even as a benefactor it would have, not so much survival value, as what we may call civilization value, would be something, in Aristotelian phrase, which helps the community not to live but to live well. Survival value and civilization value coincide at some periods and in some circumstances, but not in all. What at any rate seems certain is that when friendship bears fruit which the community can use, it has to do so accidentally, as a byproduct. Religions devised for a social purpose, like Roman emperor worship or modern attempts to sell Christianity as a means of saving civilization, do not come to much. The little knots of friends who turn their backs on the world are those who really transform it. Egyptian and Babylonian mathematics were practical and social, pursued in the service of agriculture and magic. But the free Greek mathematics, pursued by friends as a leisure occupation, have mattered to us more. Others